Hello and welcome to Drilling Insight. I'm your host, Jeremy Verdusco, editor of National Driller. I'm joined today by expert drilling trainer Brock Yorty and Glenn Minyard, safety coordinator with the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150 AFL-CIO, Apprentice and Skill Improvement Program. We'll talk about COVID-19, how to fix drillers on the job site, and what steps crews can take to mitigate risk. Many in our audience fall into the essential category, so we aim to provide actionable steps to implement in your own business to keep crews, customers, and their families safer. Each guest brings his own expertise and viewpoint to share, but as National Driller readers know, rules, regulations, and laws governing drilling, health, and safety vary from state to state and country by country. Plan projects to comply with local legal and sanitary authorities and any applicable federal laws and regulations. Thanks for joining us. Let's get started. First off, you both still work with several crews considered essential. Have you seen any changes in the volume or types of jobs out there right now?
Well, yeah, we've seen some change in volume. The work is kind of going the same. Some of the projects seem to be taking longer, and production's not there like it used to be with some of the changes that the employees are having to go through with just treating the job in different ways. So a couple new procedures, guys aren't used to it. You know, it's starting to get better, it's improving. But it's just making that adjustment to deal with the new hazard that's in the workplace.
Mm-hmm. Brock?
Yeah, the hazard is obviously the big outlier with this being highly contagious and how we have to operate with looking at good hygiene and stuff. But, you know, being in the States, we're very much about convenience. And now that as we get out of our truck on the way to the job site, you know, where we would grab breakfast or water or those things, you know, there's the uncertainty of the, you know, that extra hazard of going into, you know, as crews work overnight. Now we're considering the hotels, the quality of the hotel. You know, some rural areas don't just have the 5-star amenities we're used to, you know, and maybe that by the roadside inn that has color TV and free HBO. Now we question, you know, are they up to the same standards as a commercial chain that's responsible for, you know, having that negative feedback? So, you know, we have the uncertainty of the virus, but now we have lots of places shut down that what was familiar about being able to get to the job site and be comfortable to start a complex task. Now there's other unfamiliar things. It's uncharted territory.
Okay, so Glenn, can you walk us through a typical mobilization, demobilization under COVID-19? What kind of things are new?
The new thing is just addressing the COVID, trying to tell people, you know, we need to do this, try to maintain social distancing while we're doing it, wearing the face covers. Your typical job hazards are still the same hazards we've had. We're just got the addition, and I almost start to talk to the guys like the world is a hazmat site now. So the way we'd mob in, if we were going into a hazmat site, making sure you got gloves on, making sure you're washing your hands. CDC recommends the face covers, so we're trying to get a lot of the jobs just to wear the face covers. In our area, when it gets cold, it's a lot easier than when it warms up. We've had a few warm days, and it gets hot wearing that face cover. But, you know, just the added addition of having that discussion, you know, hey guys, don't know where you go after you leave, who you're involved with. You know, you have to be honest when you get to the job. Are you feeling sick? Are you coughing? Do you have a fever? Are we checking those? So we just kind of add all of that into it. But the job essentially is still the same, just with the added, you know, instruction on how to protect yourself from a virus. And that's, you know, we keep mentioning COVID-19, but really, you know, the flu, COVID-19, they're all similar protections. So we're protecting ourselves from illness in general.
And Brock, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so we've tried to condition this into the new normal for the teams, and that starts with our safety plan. Talking to the each individual about how they feel that morning. But even you say mobilization, demobilization. Our mobilization um, now we're if crews are used to riding together, we look at that. We're 100% having the discussion. If you don't feel good, the CDC now has a uh, COVID-19 self check that you can go through all the steps and discuss exposure or symptoms. It's allergy season, so people are now. I got a scratchy throat. What is happening? And then getting to the job site, the daily tasks are the same, but at the end of the jobs, many jobs, we we shut down as if there could be a shelter in place order come through, and we may not be able to get back to that job site unless it's 100% critical, out of water. So now when we close a job at the end of the day, everything's packed up, wiped down, locked up, and taken with us, with the exception of a drill rig. The job site is locked down as if severe weather's going to come through, and it may take a day or two for emergency crews to clear roads and things to get back to. So that's the big new normal for us is, acting as if we may not be able to return to the job site immediately.
Okay, so you're mainly seeing it on the back end at the end of the day. Okay.
Yep.
So I'm sure you guys have heard it out there, this concept that this is all an overreaction. What do you tell your industry peers who call some of these extra safety measures just extra, like who buck against the extra safety rules that we're seeing now?
Yeah, this comes up a lot. And one of the things I do ask them, wherever their source is, whatever their news is watching, did they play a commercial? Because if they had to play a commercial, they had to sell that commercial by getting good viewership, which means their entertainment. If you want good, accurate information, go to the CDC, go to the World Health Organization, go to your state's Department of Public Health websites. Get the straightforward information, no commercials. All they're telling you is facts. Go from there. I might give them some examples of different guys that have had experiences with being sick. It goes everything. Some are mild, some are extreme. And you don't want to be sick on the job. You don't want to spread it to the other guys on the job. We're doing vital work, and we don't want to have an outbreak on the job because that'll shut a job down as well. So we got to make sure we don't have those outbreaks on the job. If we do, we got to deal with them, and then taking it back home. This is, and the one source that I read said that it's more contagious than the flu. You're contagious for days and may not even know it. So this goes back to just talking to guys. Keep your face covered. Wash your hands until, you can't wash them anymore. And just trying to make sure you keep that 6 feet, keep that separation, and it's working. We see it in the news with all the quarantine, the social distancing. It's working. It's keeping things down, and it's preventing a lot of illness out there. And we just need to install those practices into our job and keep them going.
Yeah. So Brock, surely all of this is an overreaction, right?
No, not at all. And that's the tough thing is, we see this with other safety issues within the drilling industry where, oh, it's an overreaction to go from using a threaded hoist plug to a quick plug. A quick plug safe, you just have to, you have to respect it. But we saw enough near misses and severe injuries. So now we're seeing, we have colleagues that went to the major construction show and came back sick. And then you have other colleagues that are industry peers that are saying, this isn't any different than the flu, and they're just blowing it out of proportion. But it's just being conscious and safe of a new hazard and understanding that I don't want to be the person that has my crew infect a dozen people, or that the crew gets infected and goes back to their family. So it's the culture change, and Glenn has said this a dozen times where he calls it drillertude, where we like to dumb down things. but this isn't a time to dumb down things. I think if COVID made you poop your pants, people would be like, man, I don't want to get this severe thing and be in public and do this. But since it's a respiratory thing, and then people go from being fine to in the hospital and then
Yeah.
on a ventilator, and they go, oh, that's just for the old people. It's the same severity of us looking at mesothelioma, or requiring dust baths for hazards in our job. A
Hmm.
guy is more worried about having his arm severely torn off versus having a respiratory illness that catches him at the end of his life. When
Hmm.
if you were to ask that person that is now diminished lung capacity, if they'd rather have the ability to breathe better and maybe be missing their hand, what would they have
Yeah.
choose? So it's the severity that it's just a cold until you hear about somebody in on a ventilator. And that's
Hmm.
you know, getting getting our industry to think about the far end severity of it.
Yeah.
Sure, if I get bit by a rattlesnake and I get the antitoxin, I'm fine, right? Or
Yeah.
that you get treatment. But what if you can't get treatment, or you can't get treatment fast enough, or you
Hmm.
don't take it serious enough? So that's where we are.
Okay. Okay. So, Glenn, are you seeing issues with any crews that are hesitant to travel or want to stay home, or even crews that have been uh, grounded because of state stay-at-home rules?
Well, we did have a few of those. Some of that, as guys are getting more comfortable with wearing a mask on the job, they're getting more comfortable with using the hand sanitizers. Some of that is going off to the wayside to where there's not as much fear and there is more respect for, listen, when we're going to enter a job and we're taking everybody's temperature before you enter that job, we're doing this for your protection. And the resistance is falling off. They're feeling more that it is being addressed rather than just go to work, everything's normal, and then
Mhm.
everybody's watching the news at night and wondering why aren't we doing something at work. So there has been a lot of changes that I think have relaxed it. But yeah, going back a couple of weeks when we were first into the quarantine, there were a lot of employees who were worried and nervous. We're still nervous about it, of course. You're still cautious. You still have to respect. You don't want this illness if you can avoid it, and you don't want to
Mhm.
spread it on the job. But the procedures are now getting to be a procedure rather than something new,
Okay.
right? So I've had to wear the mask every day for the last 2 weeks. So now it's becoming something you do at work. And as that gets into place, you're seeing some of the fears, the anxieties drop to where I know why we're doing this, but it's what we have to do.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's getting better
So,
with some of the
so
workers.
So, Brock, have you seen folks hesitant to travel, or weighing this? I have to make a living, but I don't want to endanger my family. How have you seen people weighing those two things?
Uh, you, it comes to the health of our people, and mental health is very important, just as physical health is, and from a focus and distraction standpoint. But one of the tough things is it's we need our people to support their family, so they have to be able to provide and go do critical services. But at the same time, there's a lot of uncertain things going on. I when I was young with Bayreuth, I worked a project that had a lot of rattlesnakes. I just made the snake reference, but we were in Florence, Arizona, and we were doing this training deal with the Air Force and the Army, and there were, we did a snake education class. And then, as you were on this job site, there were snakes. There were lots of rattlesnakes. We were making water come out of the ground, and we were in July, and it was very arid. And it was weird how the first week went by. We were, oh shoot, there's another one. Get the handler, get them to move it off site. And then by week two, we were comfortable about it. But then we had that moment of like, wait, what are we thinking? Like they could, you know, we've been around them enough. Yep, I see it. Yeah, what I'm not scared of it, but it could still get us. And that's how our employees. they're out there thinking, is this a contagious area or not? So, we give them the right information about if we're going into it and thinking about how many cases are in the area, what is the threat level we're going into, and we reassure them. And then we have to make sure their wives and family members are comfortable with this because, I've spent 5 weeks at home, luckily being able to work remote with a lot of my teams. I have to get back out next week. I have to be on several job sites and going to my wife and having a full discussion with our 2 young children that, hey, I'm leaving. She's still going to work from home. There's just a big level there from just the COVID-19 sickness to, we don't have daycare and how this new normal has affected everything. There's not the escape. So I am asking the teams a lot, how do you feel? How is your wife feeling? How are you guys handling, no daycare right now? What else can we help with? Because, at the end of the day, it's the full health of our teams that we need, not just making sure they don't get this virus, but, those uncertainties.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I'm not sure has sunk in for everyone. I mean, these states or anyone can say the economy's open again, but until people have proper childcare, I mean, drillers have families. That's going to be a limiting factor, and I appreciate hearing that you as a manager are taking that into consideration. So, Glenn, can you tell us, Glenn or Brock, can you tell us about situations where you've heard of people that got infected, how they fared? Have you known people to experience this firsthand?
Yeah, I've had a few situations. As Brock had mentioned earlier, the guys get in the truck and they ride together. And back towards the beginning, when the shutdowns were beginning, when the quarantine was beginning, we've had people that were out visiting with friends. They go back to work. They're riding in the truck together and talking like they always did. And then they find out that friend was positive for COVID-19 because they had just traveled recently, which gave it to the driller. And then as the driller's in there, he said initially he was just feeling tired. And as he was going through it, he was, just feeling run down. He was going to bed at 7 o'clock, which normally he said he goes to bed more 9:30 or 10. And it went through. He started going, get checked out. I don't feel right. And they diagnosed him more pneumonia, told him to go home. Here's some steroids, here's some medicine. And a few more days, he said, listen, this is getting worse. It feels like somebody's sitting on my chest at night, and I can't breathe. I have to sit up. So he went back, and they told him, no, it's still, it's still a respiratory thing. It's sinus infection and pneumonia together. So it wasn't until a third trip when they finally tested him and they did the swabs, because they tested with the throat culture, making sure it's not strep, going through all their steps. And then the way the operator describes that Q-tip they use to go for the nasal sample, he described it as a wire brush. So it went up, felt like a wire brush in the nose, and they finally said, yes, you have COVID-19. And he said it felt like for 16 days somebody was sitting on his chest. It was hard to breathe. So then the helper also became ill. And the difference was, so I'm seeing a wide range of how people react. We had some people who are in their 30s in the hospital going on ventilators. You have other people like the helper. He said he barely had a cough. He barely spiked a fever of 100. And he felt kind of run down for a few days, and he thought maybe a week, and he recovered. Then we had a different person who described the illness as it hurt so much to breathe, he felt like all of his ribs were broken. And this is something that, we have to express to all the guys. It's like, yeah, great. You hear somebody try to brush it off as the flu, and you say, no, this is something that is going to affect you for 14 days if you contract this illness. Some people have it for multiple days. They really don't show anything. And then all of a sudden, within 24 hours, they can be put on a ventilator because it was building up. And then once the signs and symptoms hit, That's why they have the acute in there, right? The severe acute. It's coming on fast. So, with that comes back to some of the changes we've been putting out there, having the disinfectants on the machines, disinfect some of that, your equipment whenever you think about it. Something that's touched a lot. If you're not wearing gloves and you're touching it, disinfect this stuff. Keep the face covers on. Try and keep your helpers separated. If you're both getting in the truck together, have you been coughing? Have you been around anybody showing signs or symptoms? Do you have a fever before you ever get in that truck together? If you're in the truck together, wear the face coverings.
Mm-hmm.
Like the old West, put them on and wear them.
Yeah, I've heard about the swab test for to confirm this, and that alone makes me want to wear a mask to the supermarket.
Yeah.
So, Brock, have you known anyone with exposure or known anyone that this has affected?
Yeah, getting to work with good professionals around the world, I know multiple people that have passed away now. A Western Michigan University geology professor that was at Yale. Um, my business development mentor with Jeffco caught it at the Con Expo and ended up being a couple days, or a few weeks sick, but he beat it. And older gentleman, but that scared the heck out of me when I heard that he was impaired. We've had crews um, that have had family members, but we've been lucky that nobody's been, exposed. And we've had situations where guys have called in and said, I feel nauseous. What should I do? And we say, go take the day, go talk to your personal care physician and get checked out. And we need a doctor's note, and we know it's hard. We're trying to use Teledoc for things because you can't get into some care facilities right now. And so that's been a difficult situation. I heard a drilling company in California that I'm good friends with. The helper was irresponsible and had went out to a party, and the driller found out about it at noon on the job site and would not let him back in the truck to ride home. And said that you'll have to. And I don't know how it was resolved. Everybody got home, and
and good luck getting an Uber in a pandemic.
Right. And that's the tough thing with us going back to work. This antibody test is very important to us all right now to know, what the exposure has been. And I would feel a lot better as I walk through the Detroit airport or Atlanta airport as I go back to hitting projects around the country that, they had taken my blood and said, yeah, somewhere you were exposed and you got sick, and you're okay now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the big uncertainty with reopening, and exposing from just your small circle. And we have drilling companies that only have a 60-mile radius, 100-mile radius to 8 to 10 states, and then looking at major cities and exposure that way. That's where it's, the uncertainty still is just in the back of your mind. What am I exposing myself to?
Yeah, and folks with families in particular, knowing that you've been exposed and somehow not gotten sick or gotten a mild case, I mean, that can be a big deal where you can go out in the world and interact, go to the store, go to work, get on with your life. So what kind of measures, new safety measures do you think should become a new normal, in a post-COVID-19 world? Glenn, what do you think?
Well, a lot of what the companies are trying to do right now, not all of the companies want to do the temperature taking every morning. I do think that's a great idea just to see, if a fever's starting to come up. And we understand, if you're outside, the wind's blowing, maybe it's going to adjust that a little bit. But if you can catch some people who maybe they don't want to say they've just had a couple coughs here and there, and they think maybe something's coming on, but they're not sure, that temperature check in the morning, they catch it, and say, listen, go home until you don't have that fever. Because I think on the CDC, they have some return to work protocol for healthcare workers who were positive and now they're not. They say to wait 3 days after you have no sign of fever without using medicine to break it before returning to work, and they have the protocol. I mean, those are good things just to try to keep any illness. You know, how many illnesses do create that fever? And that's where I know in the pandemic we focused in on this, but going into the future, so many illnesses will cause that fever. So you have that spot check at the beginning just to try to catch them. We do have some companies that they don't want to do it that way. They want to stick with the face covering, trying to keep the social distancing. You know, we have some large projects which have multiple employees on them. So in the morning, you have to keep social distancing before you get everybody's temperature in. We do have some companies doing some job hazard analysis anytime two workers have to be closer than 6 feet. And they do a COVID-19 job hazard analysis along with all the typical procedures you do for safety. And with the driller, if you're on a smaller drill rig and it's the two of you, you know, you're going to work close to each other from time to time, but you do have some separation when the two guys are on the step, you know, and working each side of the rig. So you can put some of that social distancing in there and be conscious. And just the hygiene, washing your hands, having that available, you know, because we are going to have to move forward. This is probably, you know, chances are this is not the last pandemic we're ever going to see. There will be another one at some point in the future, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is. These are good practices. And I think, you know, keep them going and keep everybody vigilant. You know, keep your face covered. That's a big one. Keep your face covered. The main transmission rate is through droplets. Keep the droplets down.
Okay. So Brock, what kind of policies, I mean, you have folks out working. What kind of new policies are you implementing going forward?
You know, a great safety team is, you know, key to any of these type of hazards, you know, that where we can come up with good, you know, safety analysis, you know, work plans, you know, JSA hazard analysis are big. And this is things that we'll have to consider moving forward, not unlike you know, and I just touched my face, you know, not unlike 9/11, you know, as we went back into operating, you know, what is secure, what's not secure. You know, we went through the, you know, see something, say something, you know, time, and now, you know, we've relaxed. And one big thing is we're not just going to be able to call up our local supplier and they're going to show up and drop off 5,000 N95 dust masks. It used to be, you know, you kept 10 in the truck, and when those ran out, you stopped at whatever Lowe's, Home Depot, you know, big box store and picked up more, you know. So not indifferent from our state and federal governments right now on stock supplies, sanitizing, nitrile gloves, you know, face coverings, dust masks. These are things that we're going to need in an emergency preparation kit, not unlike hurricanes or anything else. We have to treat this just like Glenn said with, you know, this won't be the last one. We're a global economy. You know, we get a lot of equipment and technology from overseas, and we all work well together. And, you know, this type of thing with the climate's getting warmer, and the way we're just going to be at 10.5 billion people in 30 years. So we know that this is a new normal, and now it's about everything else that's unknown, right? We need to be prepared. We need to have good training. We need to make sure everybody is up to speed and has fundamentals, and they treat this with respect so that we can continue to operate. So I will never look at a gas pump handle the same again as I jumped up into my pickup truck and ate my French fries and drove down the road. You know, as I walk into a hotel or a restaurant, or I watch how other people treat their hygiene, I will now 100% be cognitive of that and say, you know, what could this be? Because streptococcus is bad. Strep is awful. Flu is awful. And these are things that we're exposed to all the time, in life choices and whatnot. This one just was highly viral and, swept the world. So I'm going to go back to kindergarten and be like my children and wash my hands for 20 seconds and understand how important it is to make sure that I keep whatever crud is in me on me and not on the rest of the world. And that's the new normal.
Okay.
One cup holder has a, hand sanitizer in the cup holder now. So always have it with you, right?
Okay. All right. Well, we hope this discussion has given our audience some mitigation ideas that they can try in their own drilling. But of course, the COVID-19 pandemic is an evolving challenge. So this conversation took place Wednesday, April 22nd, 2020. National Driller will continue to talk about COVID-19 through video conversations like this and through articles and other videos on our website, www.nationaldriller.com. I'd like to thank Glenn and Brock, as well as the audience, for taking the time out of their day. Thank you, and see you next time.